And welcome back to another episode of Over the Glass. I am your host, Jay.
And I'm Ness. Today we have Joey Gale here, who is a part of Seattle Pride. Joey, if you wouldn't mind giving us an introduction, how you identify and how you got into hockey.
Yeah, Joey Gale here. I use he, him pronouns. And I first want to start, thank you, Jay and Ness, for taking the chance to connect and having me on. Obviously, happy Pride Month and happy Game 7 to those who celebrate. I grew up in the Midwest playing hockey. I'm a Minnesotan, so of course we're very proud to proclaim we come from the state of hockey. So grew up as a Wild fan and started playing hockey probably when I was 3 years old. My dad and my older brother probably put skates on my feet, while I was, barely able to walk, let alone skate. So been playing for quite some time. Grew up playing before even I came out. So obviously through early adulthood and elementary school, middle school, sort of the journey of like finding who I was, not knowing that I was really gay yet, playing this really hyper masculine sport and sort of finding this like tension between loving playing and like, I'm not like these other guys in the locker room. There's something different. So inevitably got back into the sport after sort of stopping around early high school, right after I graduated from college. So I've been playing again probably since 2016. And really that's when my story's sort of taken off. When I moved out to Seattle in 2018 with my partner, I was itching to get on the ice again and joined one of the adult leagues out here in Seattle. And there was this like tryout sort of thing where they evaluate, what level you are so they can put you into the right division sort of thing. And it just so happened one of the evaluators was gay. And this was early on when Pride tape, the rainbow tape, was still pretty brand new. And I had it on my stick. And, at the time I sort of thought nothing of it and went to this tryout, skated around with it. And afterwards he came up to me and he was like, hey, I don't see that rainbow tape very often. Are you, part of the family? I was like, oh yeah, like yeah, absolutely. Like, what's your story? He came out, he told me, he just started playing hockey. And this was Stephen Thompson, who is the other co-founder of the Seattle Pride Hockey Association. So our story really began because of Pride Tape, which was really great.
I love that.
That's cute.
We've talked a number of times as our podcast. Yeah, we're avid hockey fans, but at its very core, we feel very passionate about who we are and our stories and the stories that we feel are not being told, and so we talk about it a lot. So, but I love that you came into this new place and you had the pride tape on your stick, and that to me, like how I wear my hat, how I wore it at the Bay FC game yesterday, the Bay FC equivalent of it. Um, it's it. I mean, I do have to start what I'm about to say off with like, I come from a place of privilege. I can walk around where I am and feel confident to show people that like I am part of this community, or other people might wear this to show that you can feel safe with them. Like, it is a symbol of like, I see you. If you want to engage with me, you'll know that this is where I come from. And it does speak from a place of privilege where people in other parts of this country and other countries cannot do that. Like the thing you mentioned about the person who came up to you and started a conversation where he's like, hey, are you family? Like, I smiled at the moment because I've been in situations in my past where you have to be a little stealth about it. And family is code for, are you also queer? Are you also part of the LGBTQ plus community? And I love just kind of just in that short moment of you telling us your how you came to find yourself in Seattle. It's something that I might not have that same exact story, but I have something very similar in it, and it's kind of the overlying theme of all of our kind of experiences between our hosts and then also people that we brought on who are also have that in their background. So, but yeah, you talked about how you kind of got introduced to like, hey, like come on over to this league that we have here. So can you kind of tell us about your journey with I guess maybe start out with like, did you have anything like that you could engage with when you were in Minnesota, and or is
Sure.
this the very first experience that you had with a like a queer, an LGBTQ centered league?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I had a mentor when I was back in school, and he taught me this sort of thing that I carry with me almost every day now. And he said, do something every day to queer your space. And at the time, it was like right when I came out, he was one of the first people I came out to. And at the time, I was like, that sounds terrifying. Like, I'm freshly gay. Like, I have no idea what the world has in store for me. And now you want me to be, like waving rainbows around and da 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 every day. And as you wear the hat with the, the Rainbow Sharks logo, and pride tape, I think is just such an awesome symbol of solidarity, of acceptance, of visibility. It's immediately this thing that like you see it and you're like, oh, like even if that guy, if that player's on the other team, at least I know like they are a good person. Like that's an intentional decision that somebody makes to put pride tape on. But no, growing up, to jump back to your question, growing up in Minnesota, I in the early late 90s, like I didn't have any queer heroes to look up to in sports. I definitely didn't have any like LGBTQ friends or supportive coaches or anything like that. So to be able to sort of stumble into this over the last few years has meant a lot, just to like my early child, like young Joey would be so proud of what the world looks like today, especially in youth hockey, at least in Seattle. But no, I was familiar with organizations like ours that existed in Chicago and Madison and New York. But it felt like this really unique time in Seattle. In 2018, 2019, we had just been announced as an expansion city for the NHL. It was before we even knew we were the Seattle Kraken, but it just felt like there was this momentum and this energy in the city of like, I think we're going to be a hockey city. There are so many transplants in Seattle. We're so close to Canada. It just felt like this really great moment of, I met this guy. His name is Steven. He loves hockey. We share this thing in common. And it was in the basement of a local arena. We invited a few LGBTQ players and allies. And we sat down and had a conversation of like, what does Seattle need right now? We have this NHL team coming. It seems like hockey's gonna just explode in our area. Like what's that thing we need? And of course we start rolling around ideas and we're like, oh well, we could, make the like Seattle Gay Hockey Association and do the whole like jockstrap thing and da 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 da. And it was like, I don't know. I've seen that done in different places, and we have friends all over the world who are part of those organizations. We love them dearly, but it was like we we live in this place that's uniquely progressive. We need an organization that matches, and we need to be at the forefront with a brand new team of inclusivity in hockey. And that's where this idea of the Seattle Pride Hockey Association came in. And it was in the basement of a local arena on a rainy Seattle day that we founded this nonprofit. And by way of that, a few weeks later, then they called themselves NHL Seattle, invited us in for a conversation. They said, we're brand new. It seems like you're brand new. We like what you're doing, and I'm sure you're going to be fans of ours. So let's create some sort of partnership and friendship. And the Kraken have really been partners of ours since day one and really helped help us succeed. I think there's a lot of organizations like ours all over the country, all over the world, who do what we do. I think we're especially unique because of how fast we've grown. We are only, 5-year-old organization, and we just hosted the largest Pride hockey tournament in the country 2 weeks ago. So to see this growth in such a short period of time. It's like, well, what was the the secret ingredients that made this all happen? So it's been just a blast to be able to build this organization and create friends in all sorts of unique places.
Yeah, since you already mentioned it, can you tell us how the event went this year? Apparently it was the biggest Pride event in the country. Like, please give us more details how that went down.
Yeah, so this was our fourth Seattle Pride Classic. We started with very humble beginnings in 2021, sort of in the coming out of COVID at the time. We had 4 teams. We had 56 participants our first year. It was like a very bare bones Pride tournament. And we started to uncover these sort of secrets to success with partners of the Kraken. So they would introduce us to some of their corporate sponsors who just wanted to be a part of our organization. There was pretty little work done on our end to sort of source these partnerships, but folks like Symetra Financial, Alaska Airlines, like knocked on our door and were like, we want to be a part of your organization. We want to give you money. Will you accept this money? And it was like, okay, thank you. This is wonderful. Does it always work like this? So over the last 4 years, we've slowly built this organization around the idea that we wanted to create the most inclusive Pride hockey tournament in the world. And again, sort of sharing examples of different tournaments and organizations around the country. You play hockey in these cities where a bunch of people like me. I'm a 5'5" white cis male, who identifies as gay. Well, there's a lot of other hockey players that look like me and have similar stories. Who tend to play into the sexuality and the shirtless thing, and it's like no. That's not what we want to lean into. There's a place for that. We love them. They're friends of ours, but we want to be a hockey space for everyone. So by way of that, we slowly continue to bring in partners, and this past year, we hosted the largest Seattle Pride Classic in the world. So it was a total of 20 teams. We had nearly 300 participants. We had 6 pros join us, former Olympians, former Stanley Cup winners, just a really, really awesome mix of people. And I think at the core of it, at the end of the day, I've always said this tournament isn't about playing hockey, which a lot of people are surprised by. It's not about playing hockey. It's not about scoring goals. It's not about being the MVP or hosting a trophy at the end of the event. To us, it's really about building community. The stories that we hear from people in such a short period of time are like truly the reason we do it. And it's a ton of energy, a ton of work. It's hours a week. We're 355 days away from our next tournament, and we're already starting to work on the next one. But it's these stories that people share with us. I played at an outdoor hockey tournament a few months ago, and this player came up to me and said, "You have no idea who I am. I played in the tournament last year. I hadn't come out to my family yet, but I invited them to watch me play hockey in the tournament. And after we won the championship," he's like, "I came out to my family." And of course, I'm like, oh, like bawling my eyes out listening to this story. I'm like, this is why we do it. It's about creating community. It's about loving this game and bringing people together. So this year was absolutely a success. Lots of games were played. Lots of fun was had. But I think community was the real winner at the end of the day.
I really love what you said about how events like this is, at the end of the day, it's not about the hockey. It's about the relationships and building community and giving folks a space where they feel safe. And because on the other side of it, it's like the folks that come to these events that feel safe to be in these spaces to show their most authentic selves to like complete strangers, which is sometimes the most terrifying thing, like in general, like to someone who may not be in this community and maybe like the most privileged to start out with, that could still be at their very root the most terrifying thing that they do. Now you layer on our queerness, our our heritage, all these other marginalized aspects of our identity, and then then you can see from our stories why it's so difficult. Like the story that you just told about the person who brought their family over to watch their game. It's like that was their way of saying, please see me, please see how much like I am at my most happiest at this moment, and like please accept everything that comes along with it. And I just love that it had such a happy ending, because we unfortunately we see too many times where it's like you pour your heart out to the people who you love most in the world, and then they still can't accept that. And it's like at that point it's like you're, but I don't really want to get too into like that side of, the conversation. But like I wanted to highlight the fact that like at the end of the day, it's that people think that we are all these pride events and everything is like so we could like shove this in your faces, that we're trying to be so proud, so prideful, in the terms of the most narcissistic manner of pride, when it's like, no, this is to essentially do like what these events that like Seattle Pride is all about, is we're raising awareness, we're building community, we're just trying to show people that like this exists, and if you feel this way, there is a space for you, because at its very core, people just want to play hockey.
Right.
And we can't seem to find anywhere where it shows that you can play hockey if you are a queer person, if you are, all these other things that, with like taking, for example, the NHL thinks that they're doing fine with inclusivity and like, but look at how many Black players are in the league. And if you trickle down to all the reasons why they, like we could even start with just like financially, like you're not doing a good job of allowing this space to be welcoming for everyone in all layers. And yeah, so I just,
That's it.
it's
Yes.
these things that don't get said, and this is why we we have this platform so we can talk about it.
No, 100%. And this is I get a little sweaty talking about this topic, because I think the NHL is a really good example of sort of the story of pride, right? We celebrate pride in this country because of the struggle we've been through, right? We, trans women of color were throwing bricks at police, and we celebrate pride today because of how far we've come. Like the polarity of like what pride is the struggle and the celebration of progress, right? And I think the NHL is in this really unique space right now where they've taken, they took pride tape away from us, and then the LGBTQ community said, no, you aren't, right? And we pushed back and we said, this is such an important piece of the game. This is such an important part of what players can do to show inclusivity, to show that hockey is for everyone, right? And they ultimately reversed that decision. I want to be aware and be mindful of the things the NHL is doing and what the NHL is, right? There's a lot of things we can celebrate and be proud of. It's sort of like one step backward, two steps forward. The NHL was the reason we got to start a league in Seattle back in April. They provided a grant for us to be able to buy the jerseys and buy the ice time and create space. So we see these examples of, well, they're investing, they are effectively doing the right things, right? They're helping organizations like ours, they're helping grow pride. Well, at the top levels, right, we see these things, we hear these things. Warm-up sweaters, right, are still banned, which is still an ongoing conversation. But then on the flip side, right, we see that all 32 teams host grassroots initiatives, celebrate Pride Night still. It's such a unique story to dig into, because there is so much progress being made. There's so much pushback. There's so much conversation, right? Like at any given point, we could be two steps backwards or two steps forwards, but I want to be mindful that there are really great friends of ours within the NHL who are doing such an incredible job. They love hockey. It's their profession. It's their identity. These people are doing like really awesome work. And then the decision makers that be are like, well, we don't like gay people and we aren't going to do these warm up jerseys because they're a distraction. I don't know who this voice is, by the way. But it's, you see all these examples. So it's such a unique time to be in hockey, to watch what the NHL is doing. It's just such a crazy time.
Unique is a very polite way of putting it.
Right.
Listen, I don't have any affiliation with the NHL, so I don't have to be nice about it. But it is
Sure.
very frustrating to see.
Yeah. Oh, it
because
is.
we see, like, within different organizations specifically, they will put in their efforts with the community. They're trying to build, they're trying to grow the sport within their own cities and things, right?
Sure.
But it is the people, excuse me, the people who are making the big decisions at the top levels, who are basically speaking for all 32 teams, no matter what, saying you can't do this because a select few people do not like it, right? And that is the frustrations that we're seeing.
Yeah.
So organizations like yours mean a whole lot, because I guess you do kind of have like a little bit of an affiliation with the NHL, with the Kraken helping you out and stuff, but it's not like you have the title of, oh yeah, we're part of the NHL, So you do have a bit of freedom to be able to do the things that you believe in, and it's really nice to see.
I do also want to piggyback on that, and like I liked what Ness said about how, at the, like, Seattle is Ness's second favorite team. And like we've talked numerous times, like last episode, I don't know if you listened to that one, like I have since kind of taken down the PWHL Minnesota Cup final medallion thing that I had. I had it up because I was uncertain, and then right before we record, I'm like, I don't want that thing up today, because I think you're aware of what they've been doing recently, and it's frustrating because it's like we like when I say like the NHL is they're not being as inclusive, like it is a lot of things that you guys have mentioned about the paper pushers at the top who are the ones that are kind of like marionetting all of this. But if you go down to the very roots of it with each team, and then they each have their leadership, like you can see from that level across the different teams, like which organizations are doing more to push back on it as much as they can, because at the end of the day, it's like big brother up here has more power to silence you, and now you've got to find ways within the cracks that you can still make a difference as best you can without basically going too hard. And then they were like, well, we're just going to ship you to Utah. Not making any correlation to, I don't know anything about anything related to Arizona to Utah, but I'm just saying it in a sense, like they have the power to be like, I'm done with you, go over here. Like, and it's like, we don't want that to happen. Like we wish it could happen without consequences, but this stuff is very complex in that there's all these little, things at play. But, yeah, it's like I love the fact that the Kraken are working with you guys. They did come up and be like, we really want to work with you guys, and that just that's really great for the Kraken, for the fans, to and everything that goes along with that. Like we can even talk about how, like, me and Ness are Sharks fans, and it's like I would not feel comfortable wearing this hat if I didn't see it from like we might not be as engaged like you guys are with the Kraken, but we have had guests. We do have relationships with people within the organization that we do kind of have seen things in the past where we do see them doing work. They could always do better, but then there's also the situation where at the end of the day, it's like they tried to do something, and the NHL came in and said, no, you're not.
Right.
And it's like, if the NHL says, no, you're not, you can push back more. But as we saw last season, they took away all the the Pride warm-up sweaters. And it's like, are you going to have them come out on the ice and like we already, not to get on a completely different tangent, but like I don't feel like the NHL cares as much about the Sharks as other teams, but I also feel
Sure.
like that gives us ability to like do more, because it's like you're not paying attention to this anyway. Like,
Right.
so, but um I don't really know how I want to segue to the next part of this, because I
No,
just feel like I could talk about this all day.
this and all three of us could go on and on. You
Yeah,
know,
right.
I do want to share, and it might sound strange at first, but in a lot of ways, I'm really thankful, and I say this really intentionally. I'm almost thankful in a lot of ways that the NHL banned Pride Tape, and ultimately we got a reversal of that ban. The period of time, and you could write a book about the period of time when that ban was in effect, of
Let's
how
write that
many.
book.
Let's write that book. It's whatever it was, 38 days in hockey, whatever we call it, or however many days. But it was such a unique time because organizations like ours, right? I was so fired up. I was ready to like brick by brick dismantle the NHL and be like, what are we doing? Why would you ban Pride Tape? Like out of nowhere, why would you take this stab in the dark at like queer people and the queer community? Like there's no reason for you to do this. But that period of time was like extraordinarily productive and constructive. We met friends in Europe. We met friends of organizations like ours in Australia. We are connected. There's a network of queer hockey organizations around around North America now that didn't exist before the Pride Tape ban existed. It was this crazy time when the day the ban came out, we got a call from the Kraken, and they were one of the first people to say, like, we are so upset by this. What can we do to continue to show support for the LGBTQ community? And it was like, that's a great ally. They are the first ones to call us and say, this sucks, and how can we help? What can we do? And just the things that happened during that time, the sort of journalism that was told, right? There were outsports articles that were like, you know, intensely destroying the NHL. There were other commentators talking about, you know, the progress that we've made and why would this decision come out and why would it be reversed? Like there's so many different things you can dig into during that period. Which continue to fascinate me, but again, like ultimately, I'm thankful that happened because we're better because of it.
Yeah, actually, since you bring that up, it feels like that moment was probably the most support in the queer community within hockey that I've ever actually noticed. Because, you know, every team has their pride, well, almost every team has their Pride Night and, you know, Pride Month posts and things. But you don't see an outpouring of support from fans like you did within that period that you mentioned. So it really is kind of an example of what did they call it, the silent majority. do you know what I'm talking about? I'm teasing. Anyways, where we do have a decent amount of supporters, but people just don't like to speak up. But this was a nice example of, no, they're out there. We don't see it as often as we'd like.
Yeah, I would love to invite the two of you if you're ever like looking for a trip and want to go watch a hockey game.
Always.
The Seattle hockey community is, and like there's just so much joy in me because I don't see this, or I haven't seen this anywhere else. But like you go to a Kraken game and you're at Climate Pledge Arena, like it is an authentically, it is not the people you would expect watching a hockey game. I'm sure it looks different at, you know, at different stadiums across the country, across North America and the NHL, but like there are so many different types of people represented who want to be there, who are excited to be there. Like it is in a lot of ways authentically queer. Like our mascot Bowie, like Bowie was supposed to be this non-binary character who
Bowie
like
is them.
Bowie is them. And like we joke in our world, like Bowie is a queer icon. Like we love Bowie. And it's you just find so much community, and we found so much community in hockey that I didn't anticipate. whether it be allies coming out just to support our organization. Our first tournament, we had a problem because we had too many allies there and not enough queer people. So we put in this rule. We were like, LGBTQ people, you get to register the first week, right? We open it up just for queer folks and say, if you identify as LGBTQ plus, this is your time. Allies, we ask you to please wait until this day. And the wave of people, I swear to God, there are more allies who want to play in this Pride tournament. It's this like unique utopia I feel like we live in, that hockey is the way it is here. Like, I tell stories. My older brother lives in Minnesota, plays hockey out there, and he's like, he plays with pride tape on his stick, and he's like, the number of times I've been called the F word on the ice, and he's like, I'm a straight white, mid-40s dude, like, what's this all about? And I'm like, that's wild. That has never happened to me in Seattle. Like, what is happening there that isn't happening here, vice versa? So it's, again, there's so much to dig into there. It makes me excited. But please come to Seattle whenever you can.
I've been
It
to a game
is on
once.
my to-do list.
I've been to a game once, and the atmosphere is so wholesome. Like, everyone is just having a great time. I didn't feel any hostility from anyone, although it was a game against the Sharks, and the Sharks got shut out, so I'm sure that's why everyone was in a good mood. But
Did you wear your Sharks gear?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Because I've been to some... I have beef with the Dallas Stars fan base, but we won't get into that. But I do have beef with them. And then my only other experience going to a game where I'm a fan of the opposing team is down at the pond where the Ducks play. But like, I feel like it's not a good example in comparison to being like out in Texas, because of how big California is. We move up and down the state. Like half of the arena was Sharks fans anyway. But like, but Seattle is definitely on my to-do list. I have a friend that is originally from the Bay who moved up there for a job and is like a casual hockey fan. And they've been told by coworkers, oh, you should go, watch the Kraken. But they're like, yeah, but I'm a Sharks fan, so
watch them
I'm
against the
a casual
Sharks.
hockey fan. Well, they don't have anyone to go with. So, but we linked up about a month ago, and I said, well, Seattle's on my to-do list, and when I get up there, we are going to a game and all this stuff. So at some point, Joey, it's going to happen, and we're going to reach out to you. We want to connect with, and at some point, I do want to play in a Seattle Pride tournament, because my experience with leagues out here, I started in co-ed, and I just happened to find teams that like I felt safe on. But the women's league that I played in to start playing in net, their queer run, their whole policy in trans inclusion is if you were assigned female at birth, if you have the female experience, like, you can play here, which I feel like is the best approach to this. Because not to get into any of that conversation, but it's just, we just want to be able to play, and you want to be able to like connect with your teammates.
Yep.
Because like I've been on a team where I could not connect for a number of reasons, and the least of them probably being like my identity and my sexuality. It's just, you feel so isolated, and this sport is a team sport.
Right.
And the best fun I have is when I find the line mates I jive with, and you just connect on that level on the ice. And then when you do score a goal, it's like the most amazing feeling ever, because it's like, we did that. We communicated. We did it. And that's all we want at the end of the day. Like, these Pride events, like, we already mentioned in numerous times that it is about building community. It's about raising awareness and everything. Because at the end of the day, we just want to be able to play hockey. I do want to kind of ask about, we've seen the types of special guests that you guys have been able to bring over. And I think that's also a wonderful experience for the folks who do play in the tournament. And it kind of also helps you guys kind of elevate the exposure of and the conversation around Seattle Pride. I mean, you've had Luke Prokop, you've had Jessica Platt, like we've mentioned, like, oh yeah, we've had Curtis Gabriel on. We asked him about his experience as an ally going to this, and we know how he's just kind of like a sponge of like, please show me how I can be supportive. And
Right.
we love him so much. Curtis, we love you so much. But you know, it just makes me smile. If you can't tell already, it just
yes.
does. But we kind of want to know from you guys' experiences. We haven't been able to, you know, like go to an event yet. And then as someone who is, you know, behind the scenes, just kind of like that joy to be able to be a part of that. And then also from your attendees, like just anything that you can kind of share with us in terms of like how wonderful it's been for them.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I there's so many things, light bulbs going off in my head of stories I want to share. But I do want to share this. In 2023, we had a really important conversation in our organization. So it gets a little technical here, but I promise there's a really sweet point to this. The tournament, we've always hosted it as a draft style tournament. So players would rank themselves. They'd tell us, you know, on a scale of, 1 to 10 or whatever, 1 being like you're a former NHL player, 10 you're brand new to the sport. Like what level are you? And then we would assemble players together into teams, and then the tournament would play, with these, conglomerations of players who've likely never met, each other, and they're playing for the first time. And we did that because we found it was such a great community builder. You build this dynamic in a locker room. You're learning from new experiences. You're meeting new teammates. You're making lifelong friends, like all the stuff we want, right? Well, in 2023, Team Trans, which is a national organization of trans hockey players all over the country, all over the US and Canada, they reached out to us and said, we would love to play in the Seattle Pride Classic, but we want to bring a team of just trans players and play as just a trans team in the tournament. And at first we were like, well, no, it's a draft style tournament. Like, this is how we do it. This is the way it's been done. Granted, we only done it 2 years. And we at first were like, well, no, like why can't we just have you on the other teams? And it was such a meaningful conversation. The NHL, one of our friends from the NHL was in the room with us. And we had a conversation with the Team Trans organization, our organization, just to talk. We were like, they are really pressing on this. There must be more to this story. And we sat down with them, had this incredible conversation about their experiences, right? Which again, as a white cis gay man, I had not had those experiences. I was viewing it through my own lens. And when they were able to share the fact that they've played in tournaments before, where they've been split up as teams and the experience is just miserable, right? They get misgendered. People don't treat them the same. The locker room feels extremely uncomfortable. And it was like, those are the experiences that I don't have, that we don't have as an organization or haven't had, that make this even more meaningful. And that was the first year we said, Team Trans, we would love to not only have one team, we want 2 Teams Trans teams coming to play in the Seattle Pride Classic. And last year was the first year we put the trans flag on our jersey. So each player gets a jersey at the tournament. And we sort of adopted this mindset of, the L's, the G's and the B's and the Q's get all this love, but the trans community really needs our love and support right now, not only in hockey, but like sports everywhere, right? And if we, the people who are hosting this inclusive space, aren't able to make space for this community, we're not doing our jobs right. And it was this like perfect moment of like, thank you for sharing this with us. Thank you for having the conversation. Sorry it took this conversation that we weren't able to recognize this. But it was one of those learning moments of hearing each other and being like, yep, this is what it's about. This is why we make space. This is why we want them to be there. So having Team Trans last year, one of their teams won the whole thing, which was just awesome. But having our pro players join us has been a really unique piece of the experience. So Curtis Gabriel was with us in 2022. He's such a sweetie. We love Curtis. Luke is a really good friend of ours now. I think he's played in every tournament since 2022. We each year we name the teams after different queer icons and trailblazers as sort of another element of education. Like, we're playing hockey, but your team is called, like Team Harvey Milk or Team, whoever it might be, Sue Bird. We just want people to be educated about who are these queer trailblazers in sports, in culture, and community that we need to be aware of. So we had a team, Luke Prokop this year, and then Justin Rogers, who's the athletic trainer for the Seattle Kraken, recently came out as gay. He's a good friend of ours. He's a dear friend of mine. We named a team after him. So it was just awesome having teams named after these, trailblazers, and then also have them there. Like, we have Team Prokop, and then here comes Luke Prokop dressed in a, Seattle Pride jersey coming onto the ice. And you're like, how did we make this happen? So just
We're so
such
awesome.
a special, right? It's just brush the shoulders off. Exactly.
Next year, you could have a Team Hobie Baker.
There we go. That's right. This whole story. Oh my gosh. But no, there was the final day of the tournament this year. This mom came up to me and she was like the quintessential mom. She had this long curly blonde hair, and probably her trans son is probably in his early 20s. And she came up to me after they finished their last game, and it's early in the morning. She's like, I flew in from Boston. This is the first time I've seen my son play hockey, and I just want to tell you how much this means to me and our family. And she starts crying, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh God, here we go. And I just start bawling. She's hugging me. I'm like, this is what it's all about. I go through the whole thing. I'm like, this is why we do it. She's crying, I'm crying. And the son comes up. He's like, Mom, did you make Joey cry? What's going on? So I think the spectators just get so much out of it. I think this type of community and this type of hockey feels, and I've used the word utopia, it feels like this really unique space that only exists for 72 hours while we have, predominantly queer people in a typically very hetero, hyper masculine space. And all of a sudden it's like, we're playing hockey and we're listening to Gaga in the locker room, and this is queer hockey, so people, I think, don't get to see that. So it's fun, I think, from all angles, from spectators, fans, family, all that kind of stuff.
That's great.
I love the crying moms.
Me too.
We had a crying mom on the Sharks not drafted. They traded for a player that grew up in the area, and the Sharks were so bad last season that they couldn't get him a win. And they always panned over to the mom, and I'm like, don't show me a mom crying, like negatively a mom is crying. And then finally he got a win, and then we saw the tears of joy, and it's just like, oh God, the mom's crying. I'm gonna start crying. Moms are contagious with their emotions.
It's so funny.
Oh my God, I have so much to say, but I do want to continue with you shared so many great things about what Seattle Pride has been doing, and it's just like, at the end of the day, that we don't want to have to tell every new person that we meet that, like, by the way, here are my pronouns. That are already, like, for me, it already tells so much about me that I almost don't even want to say it, because then I don't know which direction you're going to take it. And I don't think I want to have that conversation right now. It's like to be in this environment where, like, this is our utopia. And it's like, we don't want it to ever end. But the reality is, this is what we're fighting for. This is ideally where we hope things will one day go. And if it's in our lifetime, that would be the ultimate dream. But can you kind of talk about, from given what you've kind of seen in this time with, like, Seattle Pride and the great things that you guys are doing, and like how non-LGBTQ plus type rec leagues can kind of do better. Like, I mean, I don't think that they should strive to do what you guys are doing, but in a way that kind of like from a, because at the end of the day, like, you guys are being so successful because at the helm you have the right people in place. Like when we look at things like with the NHL and these other leagues, their focus is, well, we just want to give people a place to play, and by everyone, we're not gonna try as hard for the people who fall through the cracks. It's like at the end of the day,
Right.
hey, we're succeeding, that people are playing, they're giving us our money, wipe our hands clean, everything's working. It does take that extra step, like someone like a Curtis Gabriel, who he's shared his story numerous times. You can see the journey that he's gone through because he kind of has to pull away at the layers that were put onto him by toxic hockey, culture, toxic masculinity. And that does take a process. And we're not asking people to overnight get here. We
Right.
understand,
Yep.
just like our own stories, it takes a process to arrive at our authentic selves and to thrive in within our own, selves, and then be able to have the confidence to share that with the world. But like, if you can think of a couple of things that maybe non-LGBTQ plus rec leagues, from maybe your own experience going, navigating those spaces, like how they can be, like what are some steps that they could start doing?
Yeah, I think there are a handful of different things, and there are great examples of allies who do this right now. I think Andrew Ference, who's a friend of ours at the NHL, former defenseman, Stanley Cup winner. He participated in the tournament this year, and again, right, as a straight ally coming to an event like ours, how do you be intentional with these things? I think when we think about how other groups, how other teams and players and fans can be inclusive, it all starts with language and visibility, right? Are we being respectful in locker rooms, right? When we hear things that shouldn't be said, or we don't say those things, or, standing up for the LGBTQ community. If you're an ally and you hear something that is not, that should not be said, right? Stand up. Stand up and say something, because you don't know if there's another LGBTQ person in the locker room who's now terrified of playing on that team. Be an ally and say, we don't say that here. Like that's not what this team is about. I think visibility matters, right? Playing with pride tape on your stick. My brother, right, plays, I send him tape all the time, right? As an ally, you can have rainbows. You can tape your stick with pride tape. I think that means a ton. In Seattle, we see so many allies playing with pride tape on their sticks because they either played in the tournament, because they're a good person, because their kid just recently came out as trans and now plays hockey. That visibility is so important. When we had a handful of kids coming up to the tournament, we met this, they were probably no older than 10 or 11. They had just started playing hockey. They were a trans goalie. And to be able to bring that kid over to Team Trans after their game and introduce them to the Team Trans goalie, it was like, we're doing the thing, right? And they're just beaming ear to ear. The goalie signed a puck for the kid. It was like, yes, we're creating space. We're being good people, right? This is creating that, and right, the parents are straight. They're just, right, inviting people and friends and their children. Like, that's what it's about. We celebrate pride because we're celebrating progress, and we're bringing our people in, and we're celebrating it all together. So allies being a part of the community, using pride tape, being a helpful ally in locker rooms and on the benches. There's just all these small things you can do that mean so much, that bring so much impact to the sport.
I think on top of that, one thing that straight people, allies can do, one of the most important things they can do is just listen, right? While, especially when they're in our spaces, when they're at like Seattle Pride Hockey, listen to what people are telling you, their stories, because it's not like everyone's going to these events just to make up stories to be like, oh yeah, I'm like the most oppressed person in the whole world, like all of this happened. Like, no, these are their lived experiences. Take a moment, soak it in, and learn.
I want to share a participant in the tournament this past few weeks ago sent me this Instagram message the morning after the tournament, and I just want to share it. It captures this moment in time so perfectly, and I want to share it with you. They said, "I've been trying to find the right words to express how grateful I am to someone that made something this incredible come into existence, and I just can't seem to find the words. I've never felt so safe and comfortable with just being myself and not having to hide any part of who I am in a public setting ever. This past weekend, I didn't have to think about any of that, and I didn't even realize it until I was on the light rail riding into the airport this morning. It was a euphoric experience that I didn't even realize was occurring until it was over. Your time and effort gave me one of the greatest weekends of my life, one that gave me hope, and one that I will cherish forever. Thank you."
Did that one make you cry?
Oh my gosh. I woke up, it was
so
like the
sweet.
first thing, I was laying in bed and I read it, and I'm like, my partner turns over like, "Are you crying again?" Like, yes, read this. It's just this perfect, like, you walk into an ice arena and there's this feeling, but then you walk into an ice arena where it's just 300 of your closest queer friends all doing the thing you love. Like, that's community. And
Yeah.
to his point, he didn't even realize it until after. Like, how incredible that after you had left the space, the world felt different because of the place that you were in. Like, the world all of a sudden, like the the rainbow colored glasses came off, right, from this beautiful space, and the world seems like more dull now because we can't always be together in this, like, this perfect place. It just
That's
so good.
That's such a great example of what Pride Month is about, right? We get to put it simply, we get 12 months in the year. Only one of them we get dedicated to us as queer folks. And like, there are so many Pride events that happen throughout the month that a lot of us go to try and find that feeling of not having to worry about who we are, who's around, if we're going to be attacked verbally or whatever it is, even physically for some people. Like, I experienced, like, when I lived in Vancouver for a little bit a couple years ago, and I went to only a couple of Pride events, and they were like the most inclusive, beautiful experiences I ever had. I have been chasing that feeling ever since, and I have yet to find it out here in the Bay Area. Like, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I personally haven't experienced it, and so, like, I get it. It's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to grasp my train of thought again. It like you comparing your experience in like Joey was talking about how that person said, you know, he spent like X amount of hours in a space where it's like 300 people just made this, like, made him feel so comfortable or I'm sorry, I don't recall the pronouns of the person, but this person shared their experience about that time and being surrounded by so many people that you could feel so safe with versus being in a space where you could be with exponentially more people but feel so isolated because it's like, yeah, I'm surrounded by a million people, but like all these people could hate me, and like, why would I want this experience? And then it's like you're going back into the real world, as this person puts it, and then it's like, oh, I've left utopia, you know, and it's very saddening because that is kind of what we feel, you know, a lot of times where, let's say we do have our 1 month out of the year where it's like we put in our best effort, you know, the queer community comes out and, you know, takes pride, you know, to a whole new level, and then once it's all said and done, it's like we're still living our own experiences, but now we don't get that feeling that we had like all month. I do kind of want to circle back to, because it did make me think about how when leagues have their pride nights, it does kind of feel like how, Nessa talks about. It's like, it doesn't really feel like that. It feels fake. It feels performative. But we do see, with certain teams, like you do see the more authentic approach to it versus the ones that are being very performative about it. And I guess we have kind of mentioned it here and there early on in our conversation, but I guess I do want to like make sure we give it its space to get your perspective of how you kind of feel about those sort of like pride nights that these pro leagues at whatever level maybe.
Yeah. No, it's there'd be a whole nother podcast just talking about this topic, full episode. It feels, you can tell when a team doesn't care about the night or when the cause is purely performative. I think, again, it being in Seattle, we were just in proximity to all of these progressive people and organizations and teams that when we go to a Pride Night baseball game or the Kraken's Pride Night, it feels authentically queer. They're telling the right stories. They're inviting the right people in. The sponsors, right, that are a part of the team, they bring in all the rainbow dasher boards, and that's right. Those are intentional decisions that people are paying for, that like you want to believe there's right intent there. I think it feels almost extra special now, especially in Seattle, with seeing Justin on the bench behind the team on a Pride Night and seeing rainbows everywhere and seeing like, Justin, if you ever get a chance to talk with him, like when he's at work, right? When all of us are at work, we're professional, we're doing our thing, but you could just see in his eyes this like extra, like there's just something there that night. So I think there's just truly a variance of the teams that are doing it because they believe in it and they are donating money to causes like ours, organizations like ours. And then there's the teams that are just being told to do it because they have to, or there's one sponsor who's really behind it and really wants a Pride Night. And you can tell, right? There's teams that sort of put up a fit about it, and there's players who put up a fit about it, but it's the players who come onto the ice. We look back again, the period when Pride Tape was banned, and we look at the players who were still like throwing up middle fingers to the world and being like, I don't care, I'm still going to use this. Like Connor McDavid still did it, like put Pride Tape on in another, like at an away game. Like he didn't need to do that, right? So you see these allies, these players doing something intentional, and it's like, okay, they care enough to be able to do this. So yeah, there's it feels like you can tell.
Definitely
Absolutely.
I have a question.
We've seen it before. You're not fooling us.
So with your Seattle Pride organization here,
Mhm.
do you how do I phrase this? Do you have any plans to possibly expand, or is this something that you just want to keep locally just so you can have a little bit more of a, I don't know, control of the situation and make sure it is what it's
Sure.
like you're
Spread the love.
yeah, I don't know exactly how I'm trying to word this really, but like, if it's just in one place, you can actually do what it is what you want with it. If you expand, you gotta like, there's more work into that. But
Ness,
but
that's the golden question.
But it would be
It's
nice.
The gay agenda.
This is our gay agenda. Is this happening? Or do you have plans, dreams? Like, can we help you out?
Yeah, no, this is such a good question. It's funny, I joke so one of our first partners who I love dearly, Symmetra has been our first partner. They're with us every year. Their CMO came out to our first tournament, and she looked at me and she was like, Joey, when this tournament or when you expand, I want this tournament in every city that has an NHL team. I want a pride tournament just like this, and I will sponsor every dollar of it. Like, let's make this happen. You give me the call when it's happening. It's like you have these partners, right? Again, who are like, they want to be there, they want to see this succeed. So I think the challenge is, and I've gone back to this, is we didn't come on this success by chance, by luck. I think in a lot of ways, there's a lot of privilege that we had being where we are, working with a new team, working with a progressive team who just also shares our same values, right? From the top down, we've been with the owners. We sat down with Todd Lewicki for a lunch a few weeks ago, and he said, this is what we believe in. We want organizations like yours to succeed. We want to be your friends. We hope we can be, ours back. It's like, yeah, from the top down, this organization cares about queer people, about organizations like ours, right? We see them inviting in groups like Black Girl Hockey Club. It's like, okay, they get it, right? They're trying to tell the story. They're creating space. They're using their platform. I don't think, and again, I say this really thoughtfully, I think we have just such a unique group of people and partners and people who can make this happen and who love it so much that we can make it and we can grow it, and we have the players and we have the people, and we're growing hockey in Seattle, right? We're building rinks left and right out here because there's not enough ice to go around now. We look at other cities, I would love to expand someday. I think that's a dream of all of ours. We just switched from a 501c7 to a 501c3, which gives us all sorts of access to different funding and opportunities and all of that. So in a dream world, in 20 years, if we sit down for a conversation again, I hope I'm able to say, like, the Pride Tournament of North America is in 20 cities, and, these NHL teams are a part of it, and we've got Olympians and PWHL players, and CCM is sponsoring the whole thing, and like the Stanley Cup is there. Like, that is the world I hope we can live in. But I think we need to find those people and find the other organizations who can help support us, because there's just so much love for it here that I'd want there to be just as much love if we were to go to a Minneapolis or a Wisconsin or a Boston, wherever we go, or just even being able to help organizations like ours, because we're not the only one, right? There's organizations that look and operate just like ours that we'd love to help. So someday.
First of all, I'm going to make a little note here to check in with Joey in 20 years. See if we've made it. We've made it to the dream. And then two, it does speak a lot to something that me and Ness talked about on the last episode, about how much we do need the support of allies who are approaching it in a way where they're not looking at it from like, how can we utilize you to benefit us? It needs to be authentic in the approach that we want to uplift you, and we want to give you, as Brock McGill has talked about, a seat at the table. Yeah. Because as we see people who lead without the experiences, without like understanding the reasons why we're here in the first place, if they don't lead with that, it's a recipe for disaster. You're never going to arrive at where how things will succeed if your whole approach is, well, I just want to get these queer folks in and buy tickets. Like, that should not be the objective. You should just see it from, I want to help queer folks feel seen, LGBTQ community
and
to
safe.
be part of this game. Yeah. And and if we benefit from that, awesome. It's about the partnership. And I think that's kind of like what you're alluding to with what you have right now in Seattle, which may not work out so well if the dream is to expand. It's like there's some states that there just may not be a partner that will approach it in such a manner that's been that Seattle Pride has been able to become so successful and continue to have dreams to make better for the next years to come. Yeah, it's all of our pipe dreams, and a lot of things that we talk about. We just, we want to make this world more inclusive, and it's going to be a battle, but like, man, like, you
It's
just
a
got to
long one.
continue. Yeah, we've just got to continue to be optimistic. We've got to continue to, even within our own community, we have to continue to listen to one another, because we can't say, like, I can't say, oh, Jay knows everything, that, like, and anything that you're telling me I'm not doing right, well, I'm not going to listen to you. And it's like, that's not the right approach, because we all have unique experiences that have a lot of intersections because of, the intersections of our identity, and we need to all work together. And if we're not doing that, then we're doing ourselves a disservice, and like, it even goes back to what you talked about, where you shared with us how Team Trans came in and they said, well, we don't want to be drafted. We want to just have the team. And it took that conversation, because you mentioned, I don't have that lived experience, but you came around and you were listening to them and you understand it from their perspective, and you realize, well, yes, that does make sense. And, we will let it happen. So, as much as we can continue talking for days, because that's just, at the end of the day, it's like, I don't want these conversations to end, but, but I'd imagine offline, this is not going to be the end of it. And I would love, obviously, to have you on again, and we will be reaching out to you, and we do make plans to go out to Seattle. But until then, is there any other things that you kind of want to do, like a shout out, anything that we may not have like covered that you feel is important to, put out into the world?
I love this quote from Megan Rapinoe after winning the World Cup a few years ago. I think the line is something to the effect of, you can't win without gays, said like half jokingly, half serious. And I sort of carry that as a life motto, both jokingly and serious, that, creating space for the community, creating space during Pride Month, and really creating space all 365 days of the year is so damn important. So thank you for making space in this podcast. It's so important for the hockey community to have these conversations. So thank you for pushing hockey forward and making it better.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm just kidding.
No, thank you for the kind words.
But cry again.
Oh, here, incoming crying warning. And with that, thank you once again, Joey, for, coming on and sharing all this great, all your perspective and the conversation, and just everything that you're doing out in Seattle with Seattle Pride. And until next time, I am your host, Jay.
And I'm co-host Ness. Joey, you can sign off too if you want.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, and I'm Joey from Seattle.
Thanks
All
for
right,
joining
take
us.
care, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.